how to never get angry or bothered by anyone. He who angers you conquers you. These words remind us that our peace is the ultimate power. Carl Jung believed that much of what irritates us in others is often a reflection of what we haven't yet accepted within ourselves. In today's video, you'll learn how to reclaim your emotional sovereignty, transform triggers into teachers, and live from a space of spiritual intelligence and inner mastery. Imagine no longer being shaken by someone else's chaos. What would your life feel like then? As you watch, I invite you to reflect. What usually triggers you, and how can you transmute that into wisdom? Leave your thoughts in the comments, because your insight might be the light someone else needs. Let's begin. 1. Your reactions are your choice. Your reaction is your choice, your power, your turning point. You can either hand over your emotional sovereignty to someone else's words and behavior, or you can pause, observe, and reclaim your inner authority. The most powerful people aren't the ones who never get offended. They're the ones who know how to alchemize offense into insight. Every time someone provokes you, the universe is handing you a mirror, not a weapon. Most people swing that mirror like a sword, trying to defend their ego. But the wise ones stare into it and ask, what within me is responding so violently? What wound is asking to be healed? This is where true spiritual awakening begins, not in avoiding conflict, but in responding from consciousness rather than from pain. The ego seeks to react. It wants to prove, defend, and dominate. But the soul seeks to rise. It wants peace, not power. The difference between reaction and response is the difference between unconsciousness and spiritual intelligence. When you respond with awareness, you stop letting other people dictate your emotional weather. Just because someone storms into your day doesn't mean you have to get wet. You are not obligated to absorb the energy that others project. In fact, the most evolved souls are not the ones who control others, but the ones who master their own inner state regardless of what others do. Carl Jung's teachings remind us that what we see in others is often what we have yet to face in ourselves. So when someone disrespects you, gossips about you, ignores you, or even mocks you, it's not about them. It's about whether you will allow that to shape your inner world. In the modern age, we are surrounded by triggers, online, offline, in relationships, in traffic, at work. But every trigger is an invitation, a test of your alignment, not your tolerance. Choosing to respond with presence instead of reacting with pain is the mark of deep inner maturity. This doesn't mean being passive. It means being sovereign. It means you get to decide who enters your peace and what energy you give permission to alter your frequency. Emotional discipline is not suppression. It's spiritual clarity. It's the deep knowing that you no longer dance to the rhythm of someone else's dysfunction. The real flex is being able to walk away without closing your heart. The real power is being able to smile, not because you're weak, but because you've grown. This is not just a mindset, it's a vibration. And the more you choose it, the less the world can shake you. Because the one who cannot be disturbed cannot be controlled. And in that stillness, you meet yourself. Have you ever practiced pausing before reacting to protect your peace? If so, let us know how it's helped you. If not, comment, I will pause before I react to start cultivating emotional mastery with us. 2. Stop expecting others to behave like you. When you stop expecting others to behave like you set yourself free from one of the most draining emotional traps, the illusion of control. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." That's not just a quote, it's a mirror. The anger, the offense, the disappointment you feel when someone acts carelessly, lies, betrays, or disrespects you isn't just about what they did. It's about the silent contract you wrote in your mind, believing they would act with your same values, your same level of intelligence, emotional depth, or spiritual wisdom. But they won't, and they're not supposed to. Expecting people to mirror your integrity is like trying to download advanced software into a system that hasn't been updated in years. Not everyone is designed to meet you where you are, and that's not arrogance, it's clarity. People behave based on their own level of consciousness, and when you force them into your mold, you begin to suffer not because of their actions, but because of your expectations. Spiritual awakening requires you to see clearly without needing to control. You must allow others the dignity of their own path, even when it collides with yours. You may have chosen healing, growth, awareness, but they may still be choosing projection, survival, or ego defense. You're not here to fix them. You're here to master your reaction to them. The true test of your evolution isn't how spiritual you sound, but how calm you remain when someone tries to pull you back into the chaos you've already outgrown. Detachment, in this case, is intelligence, not indifference. It is grace choosing itself. There will be people who misunderstand your silence as weakness, your peace as passivity, your distance as arrogance. Let them. Because your soul didn't come here to explain itself to people committed to misreading your energy. The deeper you go into your own healing, the more you realize that your power isn't in how you control others, it's in how you can serve yourself. You learn to walk away, not to prove a point, but to protect your frequency, not to punish them, but to preserve your power. You are not for everyone, and that is your superpower. The more you expect others to have your heart, your honesty, your effort, the more you drain yourself. Some people are not capable of meeting you, not because they're evil, but because they're asleep. Let them sleep. Let them go. Your peace is the highest form of intelligence. You don't need to be angry to be strong. You don't need to be reactive to be respected. The rarest kind of power is the kind that doesn't flinch. You are the calm in the storm, the stillness in the noise, the observer, not the reactor. When you stop expecting others to act like you stop giving them the power to shake your inner world. You begin to live from within, not from their behavior. That's not just maturity, that's sovereignty. Are you ready to stop expecting others to be just like you? If so, comment below, "I choose acceptance," to show your commitment to inner peace and emotional freedom. Let's grow together, one mindful choice at a time. 3. Let go of the need to always be right. The need to always be right is one of the most deceptive traps of the ego. It convinces you that control is strength, that dominance is intelligence, and that being heard is the same as being understood. But true spiritual development begins when you release that craving. You don't need to win every argument to be powerful. In fact, Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." What triggers you is not your enemy, it's your mirror. When someone challenges your belief or questions your viewpoint, your reaction reveals your level of inner peace. If you're quick to defend, to interrupt, to insist that they just don't get it, what you're really saying is that a part of you still needs external validation. That's not a flaw, it's a lesson. One that asks you to stop outsourcing your worth to other people's agreement. Spirituality teaches us that peace is greater than pride. Wisdom knows that silence is louder than noise. The moment you choose not to respond to provocation, not to explain yourself to be seen, not to argue to be right, you transcend the battlefield altogether. When you let go of the need to be right, you begin to access a different frequency of energy, one that is not about proving, but about preserving. You preserve your energy, your attention, your emotional state. You stop hemorrhaging power every time someone disagrees with you. And ironically, the more you detach from needing to convince others, the more magnetic and influential you become. People are drawn to those who don't flinch at disapproval, who don't collapse when misunderstood. That's the kind of presence that comes from true spiritual wisdom. It's not passive, it's powerful. Carl Jung reminded us that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And for many of us, the unconscious desire to always be right is a symptom of deeper emotional wounds, times when we felt dismissed, unseen, silenced. But your healing does not come through loudness. It comes through stillness, through realizing that your worth is not conditional upon being understood. It's anchored in your essence, not your arguments. The more you practice this detachment, the more peace you experience in every area of your life. You stop taking things personally. You stop needing the last word. You begin to notice how many people live in constant mental battles, defending, justifying, correcting, without realizing they're draining themselves. And while others keep fighting to be right, you're choosing to be free. You're choosing peace over performance, awareness over approval. This is not a weakness. This is mastery. This is where spiritual intelligence becomes visible, not in how much you know, but in how little you need to prove. So when tension arises, let your calm lead. Let your energy stay neutral. Let your spirit remain grounded. That's how you protect your power. That's how you rise. If this message helped you release the need to always be right, take a moment to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Let's keep growing in peace and understanding together. 4. Don't let others define your worth. People will try to define you through their own limitations, but their opinions are not your identity. The moment you allow others to determine your worth is the moment you hand over your spiritual authority. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Yet many people never live that truth because they're trapped in the loop of proving, pleasing, and performing. But you were not born to shrink to fit anyone's comfort zone. You were born to expand, to remember, and to protect the sacred energy that you carry. When someone criticizes or dismisses you, it's often their own shadow reacting to your light. That rejection you felt, it wasn't about your worth, it was about their wounds. Spiritual wisdom teaches us that projection is the language of unconscious pain, and your task is not to absorb it, but to witness it without letting it shake your foundation. In a world that constantly tries to monetize attention and manufacture insecurity, choosing to know your worth without external approval is a spiritual awakening in itself. It's not just about confidence, it's about reclaiming the power you gave away. You are not your job title. You are not your follower count. You are not your past mistakes or someone else's opinion of what's possible for you. Your worth is ancient. It existed before anyone had a name for it. And yet, if you keep waiting for the world to mirror it back to you, you'll always feel like something's missing. Stop waiting to be seen by people who were never meant to understand your frequency. The rarest souls are often misread by those who lack the spiritual depth to recognize divine presence in human form. Your energy is sacred, and part of honoring that sacredness is recognizing that not everyone is qualified to evaluate your value. Their misunderstanding is not your responsibility to fix. Their silence is not your cue to doubt. Their approval is not your gateway to begin. As long as you're measuring your identity by someone else's ruler, you'll remain disconnected from the inner compass that already knows the way. This is the deeper intelligence Jung pointed to: the call to individuate, to separate your soul's voice from the collective noise. Your authenticity is not up for debate. Your peace is not up for negotiation. What's truly powerful is not being liked by everyone. It's being fully aligned with who you are, even when that scares people. You didn't come here to be a diluted version of yourself. You came here to walk like you know who you are, to speak like your truth matters, and to hold your spiritual posture even when no one claps. When someone tries to make you feel small, remember, you're not too much. They're just not prepared. You're not hard to love. They're just unfamiliar with depth. And you're not difficult. You're discerning. The more you honor your worth, the more you'll attract situations, opportunities, and relationships that reflect your frequency, not your fear. This is the moment you stop waiting for validation and start living from alignment. You are not who they say you are. You are who you remember yourself to be when the noise fades and the soul speaks. Let that voice be your guide. Let that knowing be your home. Let your worth be non-negotiable. If you're ready to stop letting others define your worth and take back your emotional freedom, comment below. I define my own value. And if this message speaks to you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts. Your voice matters here. 5. Set boundaries to protect your energy. When you begin to set boundaries, you are not pushing people away. You are inviting your highest self to rise. You are finally saying, "My energy is sacred," and that silent declaration changes everything. The moment you stop giving everyone open access to your mind, your time, and your emotions, you start to feel the return of your personal power. People might say you've changed, but what's really happening is that you're no longer available for your own disrespect. You've realized that constantly saying yes to others was a slow and quiet way of saying no to yourself. Carl Jung taught us that the soul becomes troubled not because of outer chaos, but because of inner betrayal when we abandon our truth to keep the peace, to be accepted, to avoid confrontation. But what if the real confrontation is with yourself? What if the war is within every time you smile when you're hurting, agree when you're unsure, or stay silent when your spirit is screaming? The most dangerous form of exhaustion is not physical, it's emotional. It's the slow drain that comes from unspoken boundaries, from relationships built on obligation instead of mutual respect. It's allowing guilt to become your compass, and fear to become your script. You don't have to keep proving your goodness by tolerating what drains you. Spiritual wisdom begins the moment you understand that self-respect is the foundation of inner peace. Intelligence isn't just about knowing facts. It's about knowing yourself deeply enough to protect your energy like the rare force it is. When you allow too much access, you become too predictable, too convenient. But the more selective you become, the more magnetic you are. The more you choose intentional silence over forced performance, the more people begin to recognize your presence as something rare, something real. Boundaries are not barriers. They are bridges to a life where your needs matter just as much as your love. They are the invisible lines where your authenticity breathes, where your nervous system relaxes, where your peace returns. And yes, some people will test them. But every time you uphold them, you teach your nervous system safety. You teach your inner child protection. You teach the world how to treat you. This is emotional intelligence in action. It is the unseen spiritual awakening where you are no longer reacting. You are choosing intentionally who gets your presence, your story, your softness. Carl Jung reminds us that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So if your life keeps repeating patterns of burnout, resentment, and overgiving, maybe it's not fate, it's a boundary that hasn't been drawn yet. You weren't born to absorb the chaos of others. You were born to radiate clarity. And clarity comes when you stop negotiating your worth, when you stop explaining your no, when you stop proving your right to be at peace. You don't need to become louder to be heard. You need to become clearer to be respected. Spiritual power is quiet. It is felt, not forced. And the more you protect your energy, the more that power begins to speak for you without saying a word. 6. Detach from the opinions of others. When you begin to truly evolve in your spiritual development, you reach a place where peace no longer comes from how others see you. It comes from how deeply you're rooted in your own being. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And yet so many people abandon themselves daily just to be accepted by others who don't even know how to accept themselves. You weren't created to bend under the weight of other people's opinions. You weren't born to seek approval from those who are still at war with their own reflection. Your soul came here for alignment, not applause. Every time you choose your truth over performance, you heal. Every time you choose presence over reaction, you grow. And every time you choose peace over proving yourself, you ascend into a higher level of emotional intelligence that cannot be disturbed by surface-level noise. This is the essence of real spiritual wisdom, not needing the world to validate who you are, because your self-worth is no longer on trial. You don't have to explain your soul to people who aren't listening. You don't have to prove your energy to people who cannot feel it. Detachment isn't a sign of weakness. It's the signature of those who are emotionally sovereign. You are no longer available to be defined by projections, misunderstood by those who cannot see past their filters, or drained by defending a truth that stands strong in silence. The deeper your spiritual awakening, the less interested you become in convincing anyone of your value. You learn that not reacting is an act of wisdom, not submission. That walking away from what disturbs your spirit is an act of sacred self-protection. that silence can be power and detachment can be love. You realize that not every opinion deserves a response. Not every person deserves access to your peace, and not every moment requires a reaction. Emotional maturity is knowing the difference. There is no deeper spiritual wisdom than protecting your energy without guilt. In a world obsessed with noise, your calm will threaten those addicted to chaos. In a culture addicted to visibility, your ability to remain unseen but spiritually strong becomes a rare aura that speaks louder than words. And while others are busy fighting for attention, you'll be busy aligning with purpose. While they seek validation, you'll be deepening your truth. The moment you release the need to be liked is the moment you become free. That's when you understand that spirituality is not about performance. It's about presence. It's about being so whole within yourself that even when others try to misunderstand, dismiss, or criticize you, your peace remains untouched. That is your real power. That is your true spiritual development. If you're ready to stop living by other people's opinions and start standing firm in your truth, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss content that helps you reclaim your inner power. Comment below. I release the need for approval. I am free. 7. Respond with silence, not anger. There is a quiet power in not reacting that speaks louder than any outburst. And in this stillness lies the essence of spiritual awakening. When someone attempts to provoke you, disrespects you, or tries to pull you into their chaos, your ability to remain calm is not a sign of weakness, but a reflection of deep spiritual maturity and emotional intelligence. Carl Jung taught that what irritates us in others is often a reflection of something unresolved within ourselves. And that's why silence becomes a sacred mirror. Instead of becoming a prisoner of your emotional triggers, you become the master of your internal state. And this shift changes everything. Anger is fast and shallow. It's the mind's impulsive attempt to defend the ego. But silence, that sacred pause, is deep, transformative, and sovereign. It is in that moment of restraint that your true power emerges, because when you stop reacting, you start choosing. And choice is the foundation of all spiritual freedom. People expect noise, explanation, retaliation, but when you meet aggression with presence, when you offer stillness instead of storm, your aura speaks what words cannot. This isn't about suppressing your emotions or pretending things don't affect you. It's about standing in your truth so powerfully that nothing external can shake your inner alignment. You no longer fight to be seen or understood, because you recognize that not everyone has the spiritual bandwidth to meet you where you are. That's why silence is not avoidance, it's selection. It's the conscious act of protecting your energy from those who cannot yet hold it. And in this energy, your peace becomes magnetic. You stop being reactive and instead become reflective. You don't argue with projections. You don't dance with dysfunction. You don't let temporary emotions make permanent decisions. You observe, you breathe, and you reclaim your power in the space where others lose theirs. Modern life is filled with noise, urgency, and triggers that test your presence every day. Online comments, traffic, family tension, workplace stress. But responding with stillness instead of outrage is not only revolutionary, it's the most elevated form of self-respect. Because every time you respond with silence instead of anger, you are not losing the moment, you are mastering it. You are transmuting emotional chaos into grounded wisdom, and that is the work of the awakened soul. You become the still water in the storm, the unshakable root beneath the surface, the calm eye at the center of your own inner hurricane. And while others may seek validation through loud reactions, you build quiet empires within. This is spirituality in action, not in rituals or robes, but in your ability to hold peace when the world offers you war. The one who chooses silence is not the one who loses the argument, but the one who refuses to lower their frequency to win it. If this message resonates with you, speak it into existence. I choose silence over anger. I protect my peace and respond with wisdom. If you feel the power in this, like the video, subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a moment of truth and growth. 8. Practice gratitude to dissolve anger. Carl Jung once said that even a happy life cannot be without a measure of darkness, and that truth becomes a guiding force when learning how to never get angry or bothered by anyone. The real alchemy begins not by resisting anger, but by transforming it, and the most underrated but spiritually intelligent way to do that is through the power of gratitude. When you're angry, it often means your mind is locked in a repetitive loop, obsessed with what should have happened, what someone should have said, or how things should have gone. But gratitude shatters that mental trap. It doesn't ignore the pain. It shifts your emotional posture from victimhood to spiritual power. You're not saying everything is perfect. You're saying, even in this moment, there's something sacred I refuse to overlook. That act alone brings spiritual wisdom into the body, quiets the nervous system, and reclaims your energy from the chaos of reaction. Anger feeds off the illusion that we've lost control. Gratitude reminds us that we still have power. The moment you choose to focus on what's still working, what you still love, what hasn't been taken from you, you interrupt the ego's urge to retaliate or defend. It's not weakness, it's emotional intelligence in motion. When someone disrespects you, you don't need to spiral into rage to prove your worth. You pause, ground yourself in what truly matters, and remember, my peace is not up for sale. That choice doesn't make you passive. It makes you spiritually untouchable. Carl Jung called this the individuation process, the sacred journey of unifying all fragmented parts of the self. And anger is just one of those fragments, crying out to be integrated, not indulged. In relationships, gratitude becomes a mirror that reflects growth instead of grudges. You start seeing the argument not as betrayal, but as a teacher. You begin noticing that every disappointment was preparing you for discernment. Every rejection was redirecting you to alignment. And every wound was waking you up to your own neglected power. This is spirituality in its rawest form, not floating above conflict, but learning how to rise through it without losing your center. Every thank you you whisper in moments of frustration is a psychological reset, a declaration that you're more committed to your peace than to being right. That's not just maturity, it's magnetic prosperity. Science now backs what mystics have always known. Gratitude changes the brain. It rewires your focus, redirects your emotional patterns, and sharpens your spiritual vision. The more you practice it, the more emotionally resilient you become, not because life gets easier, but because your inner world gets stronger. You stop being so reactive to noise, comments, or behaviors that once triggered you. Because you're living from a higher awareness that knows every external drama is an invitation to return inward. And when you live like that, anchored, awake, and unbothered, you don't just manage anger. You dissolve it. You turn what once consumed you into clarity. You become the kind of person who doesn't just seek peace, but embodies it, because you've made gratitude your default setting and your quiet rebellion. If you've made it this far, you're someone who chooses peace over anger. Drop a comment saying, "Gratitude is my power," to affirm your shift toward calm and clarity. Stay with us. Your journey to inner peace is only just beginning. 9. Reframe criticism as growth. When someone criticizes you, they're not just attacking your character. They're handing you a map to the parts of yourself that still need healing. Instead of recoiling in defense, pause and ask yourself what part of you is reacting. Carl Jung reminds us, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. And within that idea lies the key to emotional freedom. Most people mistake criticism as rejection, but those on a path of spiritual development see it as revelation. When you no longer see critique as a threat, but as a mirror, your whole inner world changes. You stop giving away your power to the opinions of others, and instead use every uncomfortable moment as a tool for deepening your spiritual intelligence. You realize that not everything said to you is true, but everything that affects you emotionally is pointing to something within you that still seeks resolution. That's where the growth is. That's where real transformation begins. You can either protect your ego or evolve your soul, but you can't do both at the same time. When you choose spiritual growth, you commit to self-inquiry over self-defense. You ask questions like, why does this comment hurt me? What belief is it pressing against? What truth have I avoided facing? And in doing so, you strip away the illusions of identity that were built just to feel safe. Criticism then becomes sacred. It's no longer a wound, but a window. Every harsh word, every dismissive tone, every passive-aggressive jab becomes an opportunity to observe your emotional reflexes, not obey them. You begin to master your energy instead of leaking it through reaction. This is the difference between unconscious resistance and conscious refinement. One keeps you in loops, the other moves you forward. Not all criticism is valid, but all criticism is valuable when you are spiritually awake. You learn to discern. You sift through the projections, absorb the wisdom, and let go of what isn't yours without bitterness. You become calm, not because life is easy, but because your self-awareness is deep. You are no longer ruled by the need to be liked, the urge to retaliate, or the compulsion to explain yourself. You realize that inner peace isn't found by silencing others. It's found by silencing your attachment to being understood. And in that silence, power returns. You rise above the noise with grace. You move differently, not to avoid pain, but to alchemize it. That is the essence of spiritual wisdom. That is how you stop being bothered by anyone and start becoming a master of your own presence. This is not avoidance. It's the embodiment. You embody the truth that people's opinions are reflections of their own filters, not your reality. You hold space for your growth while releasing the need to convince. You realize that someone else's misunderstanding of you does not make you less whole. It only shows where they have yet to understand themselves. And with that understanding, you begin to treat criticism as data, not drama. You stop giving it authority and start using it as fuel. Your response is no longer about them. It's about you reclaiming every part of yourself that used to get shaken. This is spirituality in action. This is how your spiritual development turns wounds into wisdom, reaction into reflection, and discomfort into clarity. And once you learn to do that, you become emotionally untouchable, not because nothing is said about you, but because nothing said about you holds power over your peace. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful insights on transforming criticism into a tool for growth. What once felt like rejection can become redirection if you're open to the lesson. Stick around. Your breakthrough starts with a shift in perspective. 10. Master the art of letting go. There is a quiet kind of intelligence that doesn't need to prove itself. It simply observes, lets go, and moves forward with grace. You don't need to win every argument or explain yourself to be at peace. Real spiritual wisdom lies in mastering the emotional space between what happens and how you choose to respond. Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And that choice begins the moment you stop giving people power over your nervous system. Emotional mastery isn't about suppressing feelings. It's about recognizing that not everything deserves your reaction. The more spiritually awakened you become, the more you understand that anger is often an invitation to engage in battles that drain your energy and disconnect you from your higher self. You don't have to accept every invitation to chaos. Some people come to trigger you, not to teach you, and your silence is the boundary they didn't expect. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting or pretending it didn't hurt. It means you've grown enough to honor what happened without being held hostage by it. Intelligence is knowing when to stay silent, when to walk away, and when to preserve your inner peace like sacred ground. You begin to feel it in your body when something no longer deserves a response. Your breathing slows, your heart softens, your spirit rises. That's the turning point. You realize that healing doesn't come from closure, it comes from self-respect. Jung reminded us that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. So instead of chasing validation, you begin to ask, what is this reaction revealing about me? And from that space of self-awareness, you stop needing revenge, resolution, or recognition. You find power in restraint, not reaction. Letting go becomes your declaration of freedom. You no longer wait for the apology. You become at peace. You no longer try to change what cannot be controlled. You simply let it pass through you, like the wind, and you remain centered in your own stillness. You don't explain your silence. You wear it like armor. And in this stillness, you begin to magnetize everything that aligns with your intelligence and spiritual wisdom. You walk away, not because you're weak, but because you've outgrown the drama. You stop proving your worth because you've embodied it. You stop shrinking yourself to be understood because you've chosen to be whole. This is what it means to master the art of letting go, not to run away, but to rise above with power, precision, and peace. To affirm your commitment to inner peace, declare your release. Comment below, "I choose to let go," to mark your moment of freedom and inspire others to free themselves from what no longer serves them. And remember, Your peace is a sacred power that no one can take unless you hand it over. As Carl Jung once said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Let this be the moment you choose inner mastery over external reaction. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to like this video. Share it with someone who needs this spiritual reminder, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Tap the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming content on emotional intelligence, spiritual awakening, and Carl Jung's timeless insights. Until next time, stay calm, stay aware, and stay wise. They never told you this about sexual energy and prosperity. As Napoleon Hill once said, the emotion of sex has back of it the possibility of 3 constructive potentialities: the perpetuation of mankind, the maintenance of health, and the transformation of mediocrity into genius. In today's video, we're diving deep into Carl Jung's forgotten wisdom and uncovering a truth they never told you: that your sexual energy, when consciously directed, is the key to attracting not just wealth, but inner mastery, magnetic presence, and soul-aligned prosperity. What if the very energy you've been taught to suppress or waste was actually your gateway to building an empire? Drop a comment below. Have you ever felt like your energy could change the room or even your life? Let's talk about it. And if this resonates, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to remember their power. Welcome to Spiritual Wisdom 1. The volcano within. Discipline versus depletion. Most men unknowingly drain their sexual energy every day, not realizing they're giving away the very force that could elevate them into their highest potential. This energy is sacred. It is not just biological, it is spiritual currency. The rare few who understand this don't chase pleasure, they channel power. They hold this fire within, not to suppress it, but to transmute it. Carl Jung called this process a form of alchemy, where raw, instinctual desire, the lead, is transformed into creative brilliance, spiritual magnetism, and inner gold. It's not celibacy that creates transformation, but conscious mastery. When this energy is retained and directed inward, it awakens something divine. It sharpens focus, deepens intuition, and magnetizes abundance, not just money, but influence, synchronicity, opportunity, and respect. Prosperity flows not from effort alone, but from frequency. And your frequency is powered by your energy reserves, not by what you give away too easily. In a society that encourages instant gratification, the ability to withhold, redirect, and elevate your energy becomes a spiritual awakening in itself. You begin to notice that your presence carries more weight. People listen differently. You speak less, but your words land deeper. You don't chase success, it circles back to you. This is the quiet power of the sovereign man. He walks with a fire in his chest and a calm in his eyes. He doesn't need to prove anything, because he's in command of the one thing that cannot be faked: his life force. The sexual energy that once ruled him is now the fuel behind his creative pursuits, his business decisions, his emotional depth, and his spiritual clarity. Jung saw this transformation not as repression, but as individuation, the becoming of the true self, where instincts are no longer enslaving, but serve a higher vision. The modern man often looks outside for validation, for shortcuts, for achievement, while the awakened man turns inward and asks, "What am I leaking What am I avoiding? What am I capable of creating if I stop squandering my essence? This question alone begins to reshape your path. Your energy is not just personal, it's magnetic. It broadcasts your beliefs, your boundaries, your intentions, and your inner structure. The man who guards his energy isn't closed off. He's aligned. He's not rigid. He's focused. He becomes a quiet storm in the room, not through intimidation, but through clarity. While others are drained by distraction, he builds. While others chase temporary highs, he anchors into legacy. While others erupt in moments of fleeting pleasure, he uses that volcano within to forge a new identity, one made not from reaction, but from intention. When you understand that every urge is a messenger and every temptation is a test of alignment, you stop seeing your desires as something to fear or suppress. Instead, you rise above them by seeing through them. You don't fight fire with shame, you turn it into fuel. And in doing so, you access a dimension of self-respect that radiates out into every part of your life. You begin to walk differently, speak differently, lead differently. You become the embodiment of discipline as identity. This isn't about denying your humanity. It's about honoring your divinity. Your prosperity doesn't begin in your bank account. It begins in your bloodstream. It begins in your breath, your restraint, your focus. It begins when you realize that the most powerful wealth you will ever generate starts with what you choose not to waste. That is the forgotten wisdom. That is the spiritual path hidden in plain sight. 2. Spiritual technology, not theory. Strategic celibacy is not about repression, but about intelligent redirection. It is the mastery of one's vital energy, a form of spiritual technology that unlocks a deeper level of power, presence, and prosperity. Carl Jung spoke of the transcendent function, a process that integrates opposites to birth something higher. And sexual energy is one of the most primal, potent forces within us that can be transmuted into genius, success, and soulful magnetism. When you stop wasting this energy through unconscious habits and instead conserve it, you activate a nervous system upgrade. Your brain rewires itself through neuroplasticity, and your entire energetic signature shifts. Your voice deepens, not just in sound, but in presence. Your intuition becomes razor sharp. You don't chase opportunities, they find you, because your aura starts to speak louder than your words. You radiate a silent confidence that cannot be faked. People feel your presence before they hear your voice. This is the essence of aura-based authority, where your energy precedes you, and your vibration does the talking. Most people live on autopilot, leaking their life force for momentary pleasure without realizing they are draining the very power that could build their empire. They seek prosperity by grinding harder, hustling longer, and sacrificing their inner alignment. But what if true prosperity is not earned by effort alone, but by alignment with intelligent spiritual wisdom? Prosperity is not just about money. It's about the quality of energy you carry when you enter a room. It's about the decisions you make when no one is watching, the discipline you uphold when the world encourages indulgence, the sacredness with which you treat your own body and mind. When you retain your sexual energy consciously, you aren't just abstaining, you are creating. You are building an internal reservoir of fire, a magnetic field of influence that rewires how people respond to you. Your energy becomes rare, and in a world obsessed with excess, rarity is value. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." When you waste your sexual energy, you become a puppet of your unconscious. But when you harness it, you take the reins of destiny. This energy, when transmuted, is not just fuel for spiritual awakening, but the blueprint of divine prosperity. It flows into your work, your relationships, your voice, your timing. You start to experience synchronicity, alignment, and creative breakthroughs. You don't chase the world anymore. You become the still center that the world orbits around. Your magnetism multiplies, not because you're trying to impress, but because you've tapped into a spiritual intelligence most people ignore. You've become the volcano that doesn't erupt, but builds mountains. Have you ever consciously redirected your sexual energy toward your goals instead of instant gratification? If so, share your journey in the comments so others can be inspired. If not, comment, "I will try," and let's awaken the discipline within together. 3. The aura of silent prosperity. As you begin to preserve your sexual energy, your entire frequency shifts. You stop chasing and start attracting. There is a quiet power that builds in those who no longer leak their vitality through constant stimulation and momentary pleasure. You start to embody a magnetic presence that doesn't beg for attention, but commands it effortlessly. You walk into a room, and people feel your energy before a single word leaves your mouth. This is not arrogance. This is the silent confidence of someone who knows who they are and has reclaimed their life force. Carl Jung believed that every human being carries a volcano. The question is whether you let it erupt in fleeting pleasure or whether you learn to harness it as the core fire of your creative force. Silent prosperity is not about loud declarations or superficial displays of success. It is a state of energetic alignment where wealth, health, respect, and influence flow to you as natural consequences of the person you've become. It emerges after years of private battles, of saying no to what tempts the weak and yes to what builds the strong. While the world applauds noise and distraction, you move differently. You glow in your stillness. You build in your silence. You no longer have to market your worth. It is felt through your aura. People are drawn to you because they sense something rare, something grounded, something sovereign. Your energy becomes a mirror. Those who are insecure feel intimidated. Those who are conscious feel inspired. When you retain and redirect your sexual energy, you become a creator in the highest sense. That same energy that could be lost in seconds can instead be transmuted into focused vision, elevated thought, spiritual awakening, and deeper connection with your purpose. It fuels your discipline. It sharpens your mind. It brings clarity to your relationships. You stop needing constant validation or temporary pleasure because you've built an internal kingdom that can't be shaken. And from this space, prosperity is no longer something you pursue. It's something you radiate. Your frequency becomes the currency. You attract clients, opportunities, respect, and deep love, not because you are trying to, but because your energy speaks louder than your appearance or achievements ever could. True spiritual development is learning how to govern your inner world with mastery. It's understanding that prosperity begins not with what you do, but with who you are when no one is watching. Every time you choose consciousness over compulsion, every time you channel rather than chase, you invest in a future that reflects your soul's strength. You are no longer ruled by your desires. You are ruled by your vision. In a world addicted to noise, your silence becomes gold. In a world obsessed with quick pleasure, your patience becomes power. And in a world confused about success, your energy becomes proof that the real wealth is invisible, yet undeniable to those who feel it. 4. Scientific backing. They never told you that the true source of prosperity has less to do with external resources and more to do with your internal energy economy, specifically your sexual energy. This force, when disciplined and consciously directed, becomes a spiritual engine for greatness. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And nowhere is this more evident than in how society unconsciously encourages the dissipation of the very energy meant to build empires. Scientific studies show that men who practice moderation, who choose retention over release, exhibit increased testosterone, enhanced cognitive function, and greater risk tolerance, the very qualities needed to thrive in a complex world. Brain scans confirm that these individuals develop denser gray matter in regions tied to impulse control and long-term decision-making, proving that spiritual awakening isn't just metaphysical, it's neurological, psychological, and deeply practical. Yet we live in a culture that celebrates release over restraint, distraction over direction, indulgence over intention. But those who understand the value of this inner fire do not squander it for temporary pleasure. They transmute it into permanent presence. The difference between the ordinary and the extraordinary is not in their resources, but in their relationship to their own energy. Sexual energy is not merely physical, it is creative, visionary, and magnetic. It builds legacies when guided upward, not wasted outward. It fuels intuition, fuels charisma, fuels the unshakable focus that makes people listen when you speak. While most are governed by their urges, a rare few rule their realm by mastering the flow within. They walk with a certain gravity. They radiate a frequency of wealth, not from their bank account, but from the discipline that makes abundance inevitable. This kind of spiritual intelligence is not taught in schools. It is discovered in silence, refined through awareness, and anchored through daily choices. Every time you resist unconscious gratification, you upgrade your nervous system to handle more power. You begin to attract people and opportunities that match your energetic clarity. You are no longer in survival mode, you are in creation mode. Prosperity doesn't chase the distracted, it flows to the aligned. Your aura expands, your voice deepens, your gaze sharpens, and your presence becomes the product. You stop begging for attention and start commanding respect without needing to raise your voice. This is the wealth of the awakened, the kind that cannot be stolen, taxed, or manipulated, because it is built from the inside out. The real question, then, is this: are you investing your energy like a sovereign being, or spending it like someone unaware of their power? Because every impulse mastered is a throne reclaimed. Every moment of conscious restraint is a vote for the future self you're becoming. And every time you choose focus over fragmentation, you step deeper into the current of spiritual wisdom that few dare to explore. True prosperity is not about having more. It's about becoming more. It's not about chasing success. It's about radiating such deep alignment that success can't help but find you. If the science behind this truth resonates with you, leave a like, subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and tap the notification bell so you never miss insights like this. Type in the comments, "I choose to transform energy into prosperity." Let's declare it together. 5. Awakening the inner king. Archetype. Carl Jung revealed that the journey to prosperity is not merely an outer chase for wealth, but an inner transformation through sacred archetypes, beginning with the warrior, moving through the magician, and culminating in the awakening of the king. In the warrior phase, you are no longer at war with the world. You are forging an alliance with your highest self. Here, discipline is not punishment, it is devotion. You rise early, not to prove anything to others, but because your soul recognizes the value of order. You eat with intention, breathe with awareness, speak with clarity, and train your body as a temple. You begin to understand that every wasted moment, every unconscious impulse, every drained interaction is not just a distraction, it is a robbery of your divine potential. The warrior learns to guard his sexual energy, not out of repression, but because he now knows its sacred value. This energy, when unguarded, becomes scattered and addictive. But when harnessed, it becomes focus, magnetism, and power. As discipline refines the body and will, the path opens into the magician phase, where the true magic begins. Your intuition sharpens, synchronicities increase, and the unseen world begins to speak. The magician studies energy, symbols, dreams, cycles, archetypes, and the deep coding of the psyche. He begins to notice how thoughts shape emotions, how emotions shape energy, and how energy shapes reality. The magician no longer participates in drama. He observes it, transmutes it, and redirects his focus toward creation. He understands that sexual energy is not simply for pleasure, it is the raw life force that animates vision, manifestation, and spiritual intelligence. In this phase, you become a master of inner alchemy. You realize that real prosperity is a byproduct of spiritual alignment. The more deeply you know yourself, the more the world begins to mirror your worth. Carl Jung's famous quote echoes here: "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." This is the phase where you wake up, not just spiritually, but energetically. Then, without announcement or fanfare, the king arrives. He does not emerge because he was crowned by others. He emerges because he crowned himself within. The king is not chasing validation, deals, or applause. He knows his value. He creates from overflow, not need. He is magnetic because he is anchored. In rooms full of chaos, he is calm. In moments of pressure, he is clear. The king does not control others. He controls his state. That is why people trust him, follow him, and are transformed in his presence. He doesn't build empires by force. He builds them through resonance. His wealth is not stored in bank accounts. It is stored in presence, clarity, direction, and unshakable inner peace. He has mastered his sexual energy, not by denying it, but by embodying it as sacred fire that builds, protects, awakens, and blesses. The king archetype is the highest expression of masculine leadership, regal, rooted, radiant. This entire path, warrior, magician, king, is the map to true prosperity, not as society defines it, but as spiritual wisdom reveals it. When you begin to walk this path, you no longer ask, "How can I get more?" You ask, "How can I become more?" You realize that prosperity is not outside of you. It is a reflection of how deeply you've honored the power within you. You stop reacting and start ruling. And you understand that the richest man is not the one who accumulates the most, but the one who can hold the most energy, the most vision, the most stillness, and transmute all of it into divine order. That is what it means to awaken the inner king. That is the forgotten intelligence Carl Jung tried to show us. That your wealth begins in your nervous system, your attention, your discipline, and your sacred sexual energy. This is not just about money. This is about becoming the kind of man or soul who doesn't need to chase anything, because they have become everything. 6. Synchronicity, magnetism, and manifestation. Sexual energy, when elevated through conscious spiritual development, becomes the very force that bends reality in your favor. It is not merely a biological impulse. It is raw creative power waiting to be transmuted. Carl Jung warned that what we do not bring into consciousness will rule our lives as fate. And this includes the vast energy many unconsciously waste. When you refine this energy through inner work, it no longer controls you. It begins to guide you. You stop chasing, you start attracting. And that attraction is not just romantic or physical. It becomes magnetic prosperity. The people, opportunities, resources, and synchronicities that once felt distant begin to orbit around your presence, not because you asked, but because you aligned. This is where the myth of hard work begins to fall apart. You can grind all day and still be out of flow, because the universe responds not to your effort, but to your frequency. You've been told success is about discipline and sacrifice, but the deepest spiritual wisdom teaches that manifestation is about coherence. When your energy is scattered, life feels resistant. But when your energy is sacred, life feels synchronistic. High sexual energy becomes the generator of this coherence. It sharpens your intuition into precision. It transforms vague desire into embodied magnetism. You walk into rooms differently. You stop proving your worth and begin radiating it. You become the mirror through which others see what they lack or crave. Prosperity doesn't arrive because you chase it. It arrives because you are it. You've turned your life force into a signal silent, unwavering, and sovereign. This is the secret the modern world doesn't teach. That wealth is not what you hold in your hands, it's what you carry in your field. Most people are stuck in loops of energetic leakage, never realizing that their biggest drain is their inability to contain and direct their own power. But when you reclaim your sexual energy, when you stop outsourcing your validation and learn to sit with the fire inside you without needing to extinguish it for temporary pleasure, something divine happens. You become the still point in a spinning world. And from that stillness, creation begins. The message is not to suppress, but to sublimate, to alchemize your raw energy into intention, your longing into purpose, your desires into design. Spirituality is not about escaping the body. It is about mastering the power within it. Spiritual development is not a retreat from the world. It is a recalibration so that the world begins to respond to you differently. The real secret is this: when you carry your energy with sacred awareness, prosperity no longer becomes something you pursue. It becomes a natural extension of your vibration. You attract not because you're desperate, but because you've become undeniable. Thank you for watching. If this message awakened something within you, if you're ready to reclaim your power and transform your energy into true prosperity, then this is just the beginning. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So don't let your most powerful force stay hidden any longer. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom for more transformative insights. Tap the notification bell so you'll never miss the next step on your spiritual journey.